Today I'm going to teach you the fundamentals of Node-RED and at the same time show you how to build a weather forecast dashboard. To make the dashboard work, we'll need to integrate with 3 online APIs that will provide the current weather forecast, a 5-day forecast, and information about the country connected to the town or city being searched. This tutorial is an unscripted deep dive, showing you step by step how we bring these APIs together in Node-RED to produce a weather service in the form of a UI dashboard. Once you've gone through this video, you'll have a good enough understanding of Node-RED to be able to get up and running with your own flows. Just a reminder that if you enjoy this video, show some love by giving it a like, and for more content like this, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. With all that being said, let's dive right in. Right, so we are live and unscripted. I will try and keep everything as flowy as possible, mind the pun. So this is the weather dashboard that we are going to be creating. And to start things off, let's just focus on our interface and what do we need. So here I have a Node-RED interface, the Node-RED editor. I'm currently using Agility Node-RED, but any stock standard Node-RED install will work just fine because we are not going to be importing or using any third-party modules or anything special. We're going to be using the out-of-box nodes inside Node-RED. So if you haven't got Node-RED installed at this time, then your 2 options right here is to go to Node-RED's documentation, nodred.org, click on documentation and click on getting started. That will show you all kinds of different ways that you can install and set up Node-RED. Alternatively, if you want to install Node-RED the way I do, you can just go to my channel on YouTube, Bleeding Code, and you'll see that there is a video of the advanced setup of Node-RED in easy steps. That will set up Node-RED in the way that I have it right now in this video. Right, so also before we start actually creating flows and adding nodes to the editor workspace over here, let's first just go back and understand how did I get to the point where I created this weather dashboard. Well, the first thing that I did was I said, okay, fine. What I needed was to teach everyone the basics of Node-RED, which is the purpose of this video, but I had to do it in some sort of fun way. So the first thing that I did was went online and checked what are the most popular online APIs that people seem to want to use. And in the top 5 on many different sites, Open Weather Map and REST countries keep getting mentioned. So I said, okay, fine, that's pretty cool. So let's use Open Weather Map and get the current forecast. Let's maybe get the 5-day forecast, and let's use the country's APIs to get information about the country that's related to the search for this dashboard. So when I'm searching Johannesburg over here, the country is South Africa. So while I'm getting the current forecast, the 5-day forecast, then I'm also getting information about South Africa. So I'm actually using 3 different online services. Well, I'm using 2 online services, but 3 APIs in total. So that's great. Once I had that information, I moved forward and I said, okay, fine, I need to start testing these APIs so that I know what I'm going to get back. So if we go to Open Weather Map, I use their online API services, Open Weather Map, and you just sign up for a free account and you'll need to go and generate an API key under your profile. And once you've done that, you can go to the API docs and start understanding what kind of APIs you can work with. So we can see over here, we've got the current weather data, we've got an hourly forecast of 4 days, and we've got a couple of other extra APIs over here. I know for a fact that the free version does not allow you to get the forecast for 4 days, but the free version does allow you to get the current weather data and the daily forecast for 16 days. So these are the 2 APIs that I landed up using. So once I knew what APIs I wanted to use, the next step was to test them in some sort of API testing tool, of which I use Postman for all my API testing, and you can do the same. It's a free app. You can download it. You don't even need to sign up. It's postman.com. Download the app, and it will look something like this, the Postman dashboard. And you can see over here that I tested the APIs using over here. So I've got my 3 APIs. The first one was Open Weather Map. I needed to provide, it's very simple. Here's the URL. In order to interface with Open Weather Map, you need your app ID. Okay, so I just created a dummy app ID over here. You need to, and then that's all you really need. Then you need the search query. And the search query can either be like a city or suburb or town. But if you want to be more specific, because there could be duplicate towns, like for example, Florida can exist in the US and it can exist in South Africa. So what happens is if you're not specific, then it will default, and in this case, it will bring through US. So in the event that you want to be specific, then you can also just add a comma and the country code, and then that will bring through a more specific town that you were doing a query for. The optional item over here is units, and by default I think it's Fahrenheit, but in South Africa we use the metric system, so I had to actually provide the units query on top, query param, and specify that I want metric results, and that would return the following. So here's my JSON information, and this is all kinds of data that I get related to my search query, which was for Chicago. So, which is fine, because this is what I want. This is the information that I'm going to be using. So there's the temperature, it feels like, the pressure, humidity, all kinds of stuff that we can use for our dashboard. Then we go to the 16-day API, which is almost the same. It's got a little bit of a different URL. The query is exactly the same. The app ID is the same. And again, override the units if you don't want Fahrenheit. And that will then just return the next 16 days worth of data to you, which provides more or less the same information that you had on the current day's weather forecast. So that's good. I mean, we only want a 5-day forecast, but we're gonna filter and modify that information in Node-RED, so that's fine. Finally, what we also do is when we do these queries, we actually get the country code. So that's great, because then I went to the REST countries API, which is this website over here, and you don't even have to sign up for this. You can just start using their APIs from their page. So what I said, okay, fine, because I've got the code, I can be very specific when I want to return information about a country. So I ended up using this API of theirs here, where I just provide the country code, which I get from the Open Weather Maps APIs when I queried the weather forecast for the town. So this is the information that I will get back from the REST countries API. So that's cool. That's how I collected and prepared myself in order to provide all the information that I want on the weather dashboard. So there's my APIs all ready to go. So the second part was, how did I create this dashboard? Because I wanted to really fly through with this demonstration and focus on Node-RED and less on designing user interfaces, I really hacked this together using a couple of online tools. And instead of building like a React app with a specific UI framework, I just went and said, okay, fine. Let's use Twitter Bootstrap, because they've got a lot of great online resources. So I went to Bootsnip, which is an online site that provides all kinds of Twitter Bootstrap snippets, anything from dashboards to forms to anything that you can think of. And I searched through a couple of these, and I came up with these 2 pages over here. So this is some sort of dashboard page, and I said, okay, fine, this looks good. I'll just grab the HTML, I grabbed the CSS from this, and then I went through another search just to get some sort of header and search bar. I thought, okay, that's cool. I'll just grab the HTML and CSS from this. And I put it together in an online tool called JSBin. So I actually just sort of started throwing the HTML and everything inside here until I got to a point where I hacked everything and got a user interface that's still responsive. I can't think of how quicker one can actually bring together a user interface, but for things like this is obviously not a full-fledged application. Then I go with React, then I go with Redux, then I go with like Ant Design, which is what I usually use. A good example. Well, here we go. So this is now a full-fledged React application using Ant Design, and I will usually go with that for a professional app. But for what we're doing, if you just need like an internal report or something, it's really great just to sometimes put together something quick and easy that will deliver what you need in the meantime, and then you can expose this through Node-RED, which is exactly what I'm going to show everyone in a very short while. So here I put all the HTML and everything together. So yes, this is not about best practices HTML. This is not about putting your CSS in one. This is about teaching you the basics of Node-RED. So all I felt like I should do for everyone is just show you how I got to the point where I knew what I wanted to build, and I had already designed the user interface. So here's the HTML that I'm going to be using. So just a final thing while we are on the HTML, there's only a little bit of logic here at the bottom, a little bit of jQuery logic, and all it's doing is it's got a click event. It's listening for a submit or a click event on this field over here. so that when we hit enter, it does at least say please provide a search term. And once a search term is provided, all it does is it grabs the current protocol, the host and path name, and it reloads it to include the search term that was provided. That's all that's happening. Okay, so there's no fancy JavaScript, HTTP requests or anything happening over here. That's not the point of this tutorial. All I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, fine, let me reload the page and provide the search term, and then the page can then load accordingly. Now, the beauty about this is that all the business logic, all the intelligence is actually going to sit in Node-RED. We've kept our HTML page as dumb as possible and on purpose. So this is very, very cool. Now we finally get to Node-RED. All right, now we finally get to Node-RED. So the first thing that we want to do is we'll say, okay, fine, how can we expose this page, this raw static page that I've created here, how can we expose this through Node-RED, as opposed to having to put it into some sort of Node project or React project and have to deploy it to the cloud? What can we do just to get it available via URL so that we can start seeing this raw static page? All right, so I'm going to copy all this content over here, and we are going to go to Node-RED. All right, so here's my Node-RED editor, and through this exercise now, I'm also going to teach you a few things about Node-RED. Remember, the focus of this tutorial is to learn about Node-RED. It's the learning the weather app is just a bonus. Okay, so in order to expose this HTML via URL so that people can access it, we need an HTTP node, and we also need a special node called a template so that we can actually store the HTML that we put together. So on our left-hand side, we've got the node palette over here, and this is where all the available nodes for are in our Node-RED environment, allowing us to create these flows. Okay, so we can obviously sort of scroll down and up in order to see all the nodes that are available. We can also collapse and expand the categories. So all the nodes are sort of categorized. Here's your common nodes, here's your function nodes, here's your network nodes, and look at that. There's our HTTP in. Okay, we'll drag that, and for every request we need a response. We're going to drag that as well. So those are the two ways that you can sort of move nodes onto the workspace. Now, I know for a fact that we need another node called a template node. Okay, so instead of having to search for that, because we might not know where it is, let's go and actually do a little bit of a search on top. So I'll say search template. Oh, I see there's two. All right, well, which one do I use? Well, that's easy. Just hover over the one and you'll get a nice pop-up that shows you what exactly it's used for. And we can see it's part of a function node, whereas this is specific. It's an agility node called templates, and it serves a very different purpose. So hovering over them is how you can see what this node can do for you. So we've got our template node. We want to use this, and we will drag it to the workspace. So these three nodes are going to give us everything we need to expose this static HTML page. So how are we going to do that? Firstly, we have to go and double click on this HTTP in. We are going to keep it as a GET request, and we just need to give it a URL path. So let's go /weather /dashboard. Weather dashboard endpoint. The name gets used over here inside the workspace so that you can see what the node is actually doing for us. So there we go, weather dashboard endpoint, and over here we can just say HTML content, and here is where I can paste all that HTML. So don't worry too much about the syntax highlighting being mustache. We're going to get to that in a moment. We're going to output this as plain text. We're going to paste all that HTML as we copied it from JSBin, and I'm just going to go and click on done. And we don't need to do anything with the HTTP response. So the last step over here is just to link these nodes together. All right, so how do we link these nodes together? You just go and highlight on the one port of the node, and you can hold and drag your mouse onto the other and let go. And now these two nodes are linked, and you can do it either way. There we go. Those two nodes are linked as well. We've created our very first flow. It's basic, but we've got it. Okay. So I'm going to now we need to deploy this. It's not good enough that we've just linked these together. It exists in our UI. It does not exist on the server-side layer of Node-RED. So in order to deploy it, all we do is we click on the deploy button on top, and we can see successfully deployed. Thank you very much. Now, what do we do? How do we actually access this HTML content? Well, we first need the hostname and port,
and then we need the path that we created. All right, so it will be localhost 6020, but it's not /weather/dashboard. Okay, do you see over here? The URL will be relative to /API. All right, a little bit misleading, but we actually defined this in the setup of Node-RED. And all they're saying is that in order to access these endpoints, you have to add the host name, the port, and then API, and then whatever custom URL or path that you defined over here. All right, good. So let's go to a new browser tab. Let's paste it, and then we'll say API /weather/dashboard. And if we hit enter, there's our web page. So how's that for delivering HTML as a service? Huh? Pretty cool. Now keep in mind this is all static, but it's functional. If I hit enter, we've got validation over here. If I provide a search term like let's just use Johannesburg for now, all that happens is it reloads the page, it provides the search term on top Johannesburg, but nothing else is happening. This is all static for now. We're going to change that shortly. Now, step two. Step two is to go and take one of those Open Weather Map APIs, and we need to now expose that API through Node-RED. So going back to Node-RED over here, what we need to do this, we first want to test the API. Okay, so we're not going to just go ahead and create this flow already. We want to test. And how do we test? Well, it's easy. We can use an inject node. That way we can manually trigger the flow instead of having to reload web pages or anything. We can just trigger the flow right here. This inject node is pretty cool. It allows us to provide all kinds of snippets of information via message.payload or topic, and you can go and actually add more. But it's also got the ability to run on an interval, and this is how you could schedule flows for you are going to have flows in future that might need to be scheduled, and this is a great way to do it. So the inject node is very powerful. It offers you quite a lot, but for now we're just going to leave it as default because we're just testing the API for Open Weather Map. Now to test that, we also need an HTTP request node. Now, I've showed you how to do searches on the left-hand side. I've showed you how to collapse and expand. But what I haven't showed you yet is a nice little shortcut where you can do a control for Windows or command and just left-click on the workspace, and you'll be able to actually do a quick search for a node instead of having to go to the left node palette in order to find it. So in my case, I want an HTTP request node. So I just typed HTTP request, and I click on that, and there we go. There's my HTTP request. So I'm going to link this over here, and what I want to do is I want to just paste the URL as I have it in Postman. So let's go to our first one, and I'm going to just copy everything the way it is right here, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to paste this, and we want to return a parse JSON object. Okay, otherwise it would just return the JSON as text plain. So that's everything that we need. I can click on done. But if I deploy this now and I run this, it runs, but how do we see what happened? So it's like one of those flows that doesn't actually do it. Even though it does anything, there's no way to see the result. So what we need in order to see the result is we need to actually use the debug bar on the right hand side, and by using the debug node on the left, we can now go and link the HTTP request, and then it will deliver the response to this node, and this node is linked to the debug tab on the right hand side of here. Very, very cool. So if we click on deploy again, and now we run it, there we go. This is the response that was returned from our HTTP request, which was fetching the current weather forecast from Open Weather Map. Now, just a quick note on message.payload. All right, we're going to get to the message object soon enough, but what you need to know just for now is that most nodes deliver content to the other node using payloads, and that payload is available via message.payload. And that's why by default the debug node said, I assume you want me to display the payload on the right hand side over here. All right. Now, what's important about this is that the message.payload does not persist in most cases because it will get overwritten by another node using the payload. So payload is a very, very temporary property of the message object. And in a short while, I'm going to show you how we can take advantage of the message object to store a lot more information that won't be overwritten. Now, while this HTTP request works and it does its job, this is not really going to work for us because it's a static URL, and we need to change the search term over here. There we go. We need to change the search term so that it's dynamically provided instead of it just all existing over here. Now, in order to achieve this, we have to ask ourselves, okay, but how can I dynamically provide a value over here versus just pasting the URL as it is right here into the field and then clicking on done? Well, the answer to this is to understand the documentation of the node we're working with. And what's great about Node-RED is almost every single node that is available through Node-RED has got its own documentation which you can access on the Help tab over here on the right-hand side. So we can see now that the HTTP request node, it's got a description and it shows you the inputs relative to the message object that you can use in order to dynamically provide values should you not want to use the actual interface. Alright, so it can say over here, the URL, so that's message.url. If not configured in the node, this optional property sets the URL of the request. So what are they telling us? They're saying if we have not provided the URL over here, then the node goes and looks for message.url to see if there's a value there. And we are going to take full advantage of that right now. So to dynamically provide the URL, we're going to need to add a little bit of JavaScript. And the best way to do that is to use the function node. So I'm going to go and grab the function node on the left-hand side. And what I'm going to do is, just for now, I'm going to open up, I double-clicked on the function node, and I'm going to just paste this value over here. A lot of the JavaScript snippets I'm going to be pasting to save on time. I don't think anyone wants to see me type out JavaScript in this demonstration. So all I did over here is I provided the URL. So you can see this is the very URL that we pasted into the actual node. But what we're going to do now is we're going to say, okay, fine, how can we now replace Chicago with something dynamic? So firstly, in order to achieve this, we need to first know how are we going to get the search term from the incoming request. Okay, well, let's put this on pause for a moment and let's go back to our weather dashboard endpoint. So what we're going to do is we're going to temporarily use this debug node, and we want to see what comes through from the weather dashboard endpoint whenever a request is submitted. So we're going to click on the debug node, we're going to clear here, so you can click on delete to clear your console, and I'm going to change this from message.payload to show me the entire message object. This is great for debugging and troubleshooting. If you just want to see one property of the message, which in most cases is payload, that's fine. But usually when I'm troubleshooting, I will say, show me the complete message object, because it's not only payload that gets populated. Many other properties in the message object are populated as well. Right, so now I can click on deploy. And if I go here and I select this and I click on search, I can see, there we go, the request came in and it got written to the debug tab, and I can see there's our search term. That's brilliant. But if we go and click on the information, the help documentation, we can see a lot more about the HTTP endpoint for creating the service. So we can see payload for GET request contains an object of any query stream parameters, otherwise contains the body of the HTTP request. So in other words, if it's a GET request, it just returns the query stream parameters, which is perfect for us. If it was a POST request, it would have returned the body content instead. And if that was the case, where would we get the request query parameters? Well, if we search down, and we can see now that there is a request object in the message object, and it provides us pretty much anything related to the request that occurred. So there's the headers, there's our query parameters, there's additional parameters as well that we can make use of, and there's our response as well. Okay, so that's great. We've got a lot more access to this HTTP endpoint than what we thought. So if I go back to what was printed out over here and I expand request, I can see there's headers. Okay, so there's header information that came through. There's query, and there's our search term that came through. I usually do my best to stay away from message.payload because it is a temporary facility, and I want to make use of this permanently for this entire flow. So I'm rather going to reference the request.query.search. So if I now click on this function node, let's change this to a template string. Let's just expand this a bit more. Thank you. And I'm going to replace Chicago to message.request.query.search. Now this URL is a lot more dynamic. So we can click on done. And let's go and fix this up now. So now we want to put this between the inject node and the HTTP request. But instead of, the one way to do it is we first delete the wire and then we link it again. So that's one way of doing it. Alternatively, what we can do is we can actually just drag the function node and you'll see the Y becomes a little bit striped and now it links itself. So that's perfect. So all we did over here is we're overriding the URL, which means we can clear this because we don't need it here anymore. It will be dynamically determined. So let's go put this over here and click on deploy and let's test this. Okay, so that didn't come through. Of course it didn't come through. I'm being silly. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm actually going to take this wire, and this is cool because you can actually make one output trigger multiple inputs. So like in this case, I'm still going to deliver the response to the web page, but then I wanted to also run this function and deliver that to the debug node. Very cool. Click on deploy. We can go and refresh this, and let's see what was returned. Okay, so that's great. We can see it's still working. That's good news. So let's change the rules. Let's go and make it... yeah, actually it is working. It was Chicago. What am I saying? Yeah, it was Chicago, and now we can see that it actually returned Johannesburg instead, and there's all kinds of information. There's our country code. That's perfect. All right, so now we've made our request a little bit more dynamic. Okay, so moving on, we are now going to put in a little bit of better practice. This URL over here is a little bit still too static. There must be a way that we can maybe go and put the app ID somewhere and go and put the unit somewhere and reference that whenever we need it. Well, the good news there is. What we can do here is we've got contexts. We've got state in Node-RED, and we've got a node state, flow state, and global state. And what this means is we can actually go and set properties and values outside the scope of this flow to be made available whenever we need it. So what does that mean? It means like things like our app ID. We don't need to determine our app ID inside the flow. It might be something that's more generic and could be used elsewhere in Node-RED as well. So we don't want it sitting over here inside our code. We want to move this out. So we could now place it inside the flow or the global context of Node-RED. Now what's the difference between the two? On top, this is usually what gets regarded as a flow or flow tab. And if I double click on this, you can see it is regarded as a flow. I'm going to rename this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another flow tab, and I'm just going to call it another tab. All right. Now, if I store values, property values like key value pairs inside the flow context, that key value pair will only exist for the flow tab that you set it for. It will not exist inside another flow tab as well. So for example, I'm going to go here and I'm going to use the inject node, and I'm going to use a new node called change. So change node just allows us to sort of set values manually. So we can see over here, what do you want to set? Okay, I want to set the flow dot, and we can say open weather map app ID. So I want to set open weather map app ID to, and I'm going to go and change. Let's go and get that value over here. All right. So I want to go and set it to that, and now I can click on done. So once I've deployed, I can trigger this change node by clicking on the inject node, and it will go and set the flow values. And if I refresh it over here, I can now see that the open weather map app ID is available for this flow. But if I click on another tab and I refresh, it's not available for this flow tab. So that's the context. It's only available for the flow tab that you're in. If you want it to be available for all tabs, then you need to set it on the global context, the global state, and not the flow state. So that's the difference between the two. Okay, so there I've gone and set the open weather map app ID. Why don't we go and set the URL and the unit of measure as well? So what I'm going to do here now is I've just copied some JavaScript, and I'm going to override, I'm going to paste over what we've had over here, but let's go through this quickly. So now message.url is equal to flow.get, and there's our current one, current forecast. So that will get our URL for the current forecast, which I just need to go and change that prop. Then the app ID is flow.get OWM app ID, and units is flow.get OWM units. So if we go back over here, we've got OWN app ID, there's OWM URL current forecast and OWM units. And I can drag this around if I want to maybe sort it in a certain way. So that's great. So now our function is looking a lot more dynamic, and finally we return the message.request.query.search. So let's go and click on done over here and make sure that this is working by clicking on the deploy button and going and changing this to be London. Oh, so that's, this is the fun times of troubleshooting. What's happening is every time I click on deploy, nothing happened over here. I did not trigger this. I did not inject this into the flow state. But this is actually a great tip. In the inject node, you have an option, a checkbox over here. Inject once after 0.1 seconds. If we select that, every time we do a full deploy, it will automatically inject the values. So if I now click on this and I try that again, now everything worked because the flow context has been updated with all these values. So our flow is starting to look like something, but we need to clean this up a little bit. And what I love to use when cleaning this up are three very, very powerful nodes. So the first one is a comment node, and you can actually see it's available on the left-hand side. But if I do a control click, then I can search for comment as well, and there we are. So the comment nodes allow us to label our flows and structure them, providing more transparency on what's happening. It's also got the ability to provide markdown, and which will appear on the information or help tab on the right hand side when you do highlight the comment node. But most of the time I will just use it in order to provide labels on what the flows are and where they are inside the flow, and so on and so forth. So for the first one, I want to go and create a comment for our top flow where we go and set in-memory variables. There we go. And I can copy and paste. So you can copy and paste nodes, whether you highlight them like this by holding down the mouse and selecting, or just highlighting one and Control-C, Control-V, or Command-C, Command-V, and it will just duplicate the node that you highlighted. Right, so now why am I doing this? Let's go and highlight all these nodes, and let me just drag them down. So I hope you all realize that I'm slowly teaching you a few things that you can do. Remember, this is about Node-RED basics. So I'm showing you how to navigate, highlight, do this, do that. Please take it all in and realize that you're actually sort of getting a lot of compound learning in one sitting. You're learning all kinds of things about Node-RED. That's the purpose. Okay, so on top over here, we're going to do set memory variables. That's exactly what this flow is doing on top here. It's setting the memory variables. And it happens independently of this flow that's running underneath. This is the weather dashboard flow. All right, so let's drag this down over there, making it a bit neater. Now, I'm running out of space as well. So if I want, I can actually hide these palettes in the sidebar. All right, so you can see there I'm showing and hiding. And the sidebar over here, I can actually drag to open and close. So the moment I start running out of space, I can just do this, and let's see how long I can last before I actually need to open up one of these again. Now you can imagine that the moment we start throwing a number of additional nodes, how do we start making this look proper and clean and not start to confuse a person when you are 30-40 nodes later on? And the answer to that is to use what they call link nodes. I'm going to do a search over here for link in, and I'm going to do another search for link out. These nodes allow you to basically do a stop on the one line and then start on a different line over here. So let's go and have some fun with this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create another comment node over here. This is where we finalize the output, and the output is delivering the HTML content and writing to the HTTP response. So that's the finalized part of our flow. So now, how do we get from, if we take a look at the weather dashboard as well, the first step is to get current forecast. That's our first sort of step over here. It's prepping the function. This is a prep. And then we are get current. Okay, and let's maybe just make it OWM for Open Weather Map, get current. How do we get from here to here to here? And that's what these link nodes do. Right, so I can put a link node over here, and this is where the link in node, this is sort of where it starts, and I'll call it get current forecast. It's not compulsory that you call it this, but I like to do it, otherwise you start landing up with these IDs and it just makes things trickier when you're starting to troubleshoot. So we've got that, and now we can link that to our prep, and that provides that. Now, in order to get to this link in, we need to use a link out, and we just place that over there and we link it. So this here will, I'm going to say here, run get current forecast, and you can see I can either go and select this over here to say, listen, I want to link this node to that node. I can either do that by doing this over here, or I can drag the port and connect the one port to the other like that. So now we can see that when this runs and hits this link in node, or sorry, link out node, it's going to travel to this link in, and it's going to just continue working with these nodes. And in doing so, we can now start cleaning up our flows to be a lot more readable and a lot more structured. So when it comes to actually creating advanced production-based flows, this is a very, very good practice. So I can copy and paste this link in over here, and I'm going to just double click on this and change it to say finalize, and I'm going to deselect that, otherwise it's going to be linked to the top. Be careful when that happens, when you copy and paste. And I'm going to now link that, and I'm going to copy and paste this one over here, and I'm just going to double click on this and say run finalize. And now, because I provided proper labels, I can right here go and select which one I want to link to, and we have now got a proper flow from the first point to here to there, and now we deliver the response. Let's click on deploy. Let's bring out the sidebar. Now nothing will be printed to the sidebar, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually add a debug node just because, so that whenever something does run, we can see in Node-RED what is happening. I'm just going to refresh the browser here. Okay, it still worked. There's our request query. We're good. Everything is working well. So if you're still with me at this point and you're enjoying this video, do me a favor, give it a like. I'll really appreciate it. And if you want to stay tuned for a lot more videos like this, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, where I will be posting a lot more recipes and flows and advanced techniques and all things around Node-RED. Keep in mind that my channel also focuses on Node.js and the MERN stack. And if you've got any questions, don't worry about it. Just post these questions as comments underneath this video on my YouTube channel. I respond to every comment. I will do my best to try and support and assist you in understanding more of what we're doing over here. Now that we've got the basic of our flow sort of in place, we need to now start making this something. And the first thing that we need to do is we need to try and start handling errors or queries that might not make any sense. So for example, let me take this debug node, quickly detach it over here, and let me go and put it over here by where we get the current forecast. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and search for test. Now this is something that it will get through to our Node-RED flow, but it doesn't actually return anything. If I expand and I see what the payload of this request is, I can see it returned a 404. City not found. Okay, that's brilliant. So now what we need to do is we need to understand that this could happen when people are searching and they might add spelling or typos or whatever, and we need a way to handle that and deliver the response to the user as well. So what I'd like to do over here in this exercise is I actually want to do two things. I want to hide these panels. If it's a new page, if they're opening it up for the first time, I want to hide these panels. And if an error occurs, I actually want to display the error message over here. So that's what we're going to do next. So to handle incoming errors, the first thing we need to do is let's go and create a comment node, and let's just see, we'll call this catch errors. And now we've actually got a node called catch, and it works like a try catch. So it will actually catch any kind of error that is thrown through any of the nodes inside this flow tab. So we just put this over here, and we'll say catch all nodes, thank you very much. We're now going to take the message object, and we're going to, or the debug node, sorry, and we're going to place this over here for now so that we can see what the output is. If I click on catch node and I go to the help, I can see over here that the output of the catch gets written to message.error. Okay, so a message is assumed. So it's message.error, and then we can see additional properties that will get written to message.error as well. So that's great, because what I can do over here is I can change this to right to the console message.error. That is what I'm interested in right now. But also, if I don't let this run towards the output, we're going to have a problem over here towards the finalize. So if I go and run this, and now let's go and add test which is a problematic value. Oh, okay. So the problem is it's not getting to the catch error. It's going straight to finalize. Why is it doing that? It's because this here only handles errors that are thrown. The response from the HTTP request, even though it's returning a 404 response, is not actually a JavaScript error. It's just a negative response from the HTTP request. So we have to still convert it into an error. And to do that, we can go and grab a function node and place it after the HTTP request before it goes to the link node. And over here we can say we want to process result. So let's just keep this clean. And I've got some JavaScript that I'm going to paste inside here. And all I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, let's check the response for an error. If the message.status code, which we learn as well, if we read the documentation over here, we'll know that the response code gets written to message.status code. If it's anything greater than or equal to 400, then we have to handle it. So all I do over here is I try my luck and I assume that because it's open weather map, they are going to deliver the message or the error description to the message.payload.message over here. Otherwise, if that doesn't work out, then just return the entire message.payload and I'll throw that as an error. So it's just like a safety net. But ultimately, this is what should happen all the time. Once I've now got my error message ready to go, I throw the error message, which now will get caught by the catch node. All right. Now, can you see the web page is not, the response is not being returned to this web page? Why? It's because we got to the catch node and we wrote the error. There we go. Perfect. Okay. But from here, it's not going anywhere else. We have to go get to the finalize still. We have to still deliver the HTML content. So I'm just going to copy this link out node and I'm going to link that over there. And now if we deploy this and try again, it will still come back to the web page. Perfect. Okay, we haven't broken our flow. We're getting our error, but we haven't broken our flow. Now what I would like to do is I would like to display this error as well as the search term they used and display that in the header of this static HTML page. Now we finally get to the part where we're going to start modifying and turning our static page into something dynamic. So in order to do that, what I need to do here is add a function node. Let's just move that out and let's put this over here. And I'm going to call this prep error. And I'm going to paste some JavaScript logic over here. And all this is doing is we are writing to the payload, we're writing a header prop. And the header prop is whatever the message.error.message is, okay, as well as the message.request.query.search. That will give us our first, that will give us error city not found and then the search term that was used. So that's perfect. Notice what I'm also going to do here. I'm going to delete the message.request.query.search. Why am I going to do that? You'll see now. Earlier on, I mentioned that I don't want these panels to show if there is no search query or if an error occurred. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to delete the search query when an error occurs so that the page, so that the final logic knows that it can do something with that now that there is no search term. So I hit that to the link node. Now how do we get the error message written to the header over here? Well, first let's remember where we put it, okay? We stored it in message.payload.header. We need to remember that, okay? Now if we open up the template node, and if I just go and add a new one here, they kind of show you quickly what to do. So if I say a new template, they show that you've got whatever message or text that you want, but notice what they're doing. They're using double left curlies, double right, and they've got a value inside, which is just payload. Now what they're doing over here is they're telling us that you can actually dynamically insert values into the static content inside this template node. What they do is they allow you to reference the message object in order to determine what values you are going to dynamically write. And it does this using a module called MustacheJS. Similar to Handlebars, it is a templating engine that allows you to take static templates and sort of provide dynamic content into them with a lot of wonderful little bells and whistles. And it's exactly what we're going to be using. So just to know more about MustacheJS, there's the URL. I will be providing links to all of these websites. And you can see Mustache is available for all kinds of environments and programming languages. We're going to go on JavaScript, and that opens up their GitHub page. And you can see, crazy dude, yeah, with his mustache. Cool. And then they just show you like all kinds of ways that you can just use Mustache. So what we are going to do is we're going to use Mustache to overwrite the header. So I'm going to remove that template, and I'm going to go to the one we are using that has our HTML content, and I'm going to search for this Chicago, United States, which is a static value at the moment. So I'm going to remove that, and I'm going to replace it with mustache tags. So it's 2 open curlies, 2 close curlies. And inside there now, I want to store the value of the error message that was returned, which I don't know if you remember, but it was message.payload.header. Now, I don't write message.payload.header here. Okay? It's relative to the message object, and that's what they showed earlier on. And that's why I showed you the other template node, is that they showed you must start with anything from the message object. So in our case, it's payload.header. We don't need to specify message. It is relative to message. So now that we've got that over there, let's click on done and see what happens. First things first, if I don't provide any search term, then there should be no header. Instead, we get a bad query undefined. Where did that happen? Process result. Okay. So we got a bad query. Oh, and the reason why we got a bad query, that's actually brilliant. The reason why we got a bad query is because there was no search term. So when we reached this point, there was no search term, but now it goes and tries and still gets the current weather forecast without a search term. Okay, so now we need to enhance it a little bit more. And what we're going to do here is we're going to introduce a switch node. So the first things first over here, instead of just command click on the workspace or control click, I'm actually going to command click on the wire. And I'm going to search for switch. And what happens is it gets automatically linked. How cool is that? All right, once you get these shortcuts out the way, then you start really improving and getting faster with flow development in Node-RED. And in case you're wondering, how do we know what these shortcuts are, click on the information tab over here on the right-hand side, and you'll see at the bottom, there's your shortcuts, tips and tricks, and you can just refresh them, and it will show you all kinds of weird things that you can do in Node-RED. Cool. All right, so now we've got our switch node, which works like a JavaScript switch. And we can say, what are we checking? What is the property that we are referencing? We want to reference message.request.query.search. And we want to say, is not empty? There we go. We got a lot of options. Is it equal to, greater than, all kinds of crazy stuff. But all we want to say is it empty or not? If it's not empty, we want one of those conditions, and we want to add another condition, which is otherwise. So that's the same as a switch's default. So there we go, otherwise. So it will first check to see if it's not empty, but otherwise anything else, it will reach this part over here. And instead of checking all rules, I will say stop after the first match. Click on done, and you'll see that now we've got 2 output ports. So the condition is not empty, and this one is for otherwise. What does that allow us to do? If no search term was provided, just return the web page. Don't run any of the APIs. Okay? Currently, this is going to get current forecasts, which is fine if it's not empty. But if it is empty, we want to go straight to finalize here at the bottom. So let's go and grab this link out, copy and paste it, put it over here. Do you see? So now if we deploy this and I refresh this, our error goes away. So that's brilliant. Now let's go and search for a town that doesn't exist. There we go. City not found, test. That's exactly what we wanted to do. And they can still try again. So we can say, I want to search for test 2. City not found, test 2. But I also want to hide this. I don't want to show these panels if there's nothing to show. So on a new page or on an error, I want these to hide. Now remember, in the Node-RED, what we did was when an error occurs, then we delete the search query. Okay? So on first load of a page, there is no search query, so we already know that it will not exist. But if an error occurs, we manually delete the search query, and that way we can now go and add a little bit more intelligence into our template. So what I'm going to do here, I am going to grab a part of this, and this is a bit Let's see if we can get, there we go. That's a little bit better. And all I want to do is I want to grab everything under the header. And I'm going to use some mustache. And all that's going to happen is this, we can actually use message.request.query.search. And we can actually do a conditional statement over here by using hash. And remember, we don't specify message. It's relative to message. So it's request.query.search. And over here, I'm going to close tag it. And what's happening over here? We're saying if it exists. That's the same as saying if message.request.query.search is not equal to null or undefined or blank for that matter, then deliver the response of this data, deliver the output. Otherwise, don't deliver the output. So let's go click on done, deploy it, and let's see this in action. Firstly, loading the page for the first time. Great stuff. So now let's go and use an error. Great, it's still not showing the panels and we're still getting our error message over there. That's brilliant. So let's go and put a valid value like London. Okay, so that's awesome. It is working. Now that we've got error management out the way and our web page is a little bit more bulletproof, what we're going to do now is we're going to finalize the current forecast. So how do we do that over here? First thing is we need to now manage the response data that came back from the get current forecast, which means we actually need to store this data somewhere. So this is where I quickly want to introduce you to the message object and help you understand how it works. I'm going to use an inject node and I'm just going to shoot straight to a debug node, and I'm going to say the debug node must show us the entire message object. I'm going to click on deploy and I'm going to clear my debug console, and I'm just going to click on this trigger over here. Whenever a request begins, whether it's by an event that is like an HTTP endpoint or scheduled task or a listener like a catch node, or even the timestamp over here, the inject node, whenever an event is triggered and a flow begins, okay, a message object for that transaction is created, and the message object is only available for that transaction. Let's put it this way: if 6 requests for this weather dashboard endpoint came in at the exact same time, they will not share the message object. The message object will be created for each of the 6 requests, and the message object exists for the duration of the flow until it's completed. Alright, so if we take our weather dashboard, from here the message object is created, it exists, and up until this point, once the response is delivered, only then is the message object removed from memory. Right, so this over here shows us that the simplest flow that you could create, this is what gets written to the message object. It's got its own ID, it's got a topic, and it's got a payload. Now what do we know? We know that payload is temporary and in most cases will be modified once it comes in and out of other nodes. But what's nice is we can use the rest of the message object to store temporary data that will persist for the duration of the entire flow. It shouldn't be overwritten unless you accidentally used a prop value that gets used by another node, but it's usually highly unlikely. So what we want to do is I want to store the current forecast, I want to store the 5-day forecast, I want to store this data from these APIs, I want to make it available and store it inside the message object so that it's available when I need to work with that data in order to make the HTML dynamic. To do this, we can actually go and use a change node and go and set the message object on whenever this endpoint is triggered. So I'm going to click on this wire and I'm going to add a change node. There we go. And we're just going to say prep response. And all I'm going to do here is I'm going to say set message.result is equal to, and I'm not going to make it text, I want to make it to an empty JSON object. Okay, because we're going to use this later on. I need to store this. So message.result. So what happens over here now is whenever this endpoint is triggered, the message object, a result property will exist and it will be an empty object. Now what I want to do is for our current forecast, I want to go and add a little bit of intelligence over here because currently we're just managing the error. But what I want to do is I want to go write some code so that we can fix up the incoming data, because the incoming data from the OpenWeatherMap API is a little bit too raw. We want to fix it up, make it a little bit neater. So I'm just going to go grab a JavaScript snippet and I'm going to override this over here. And let's go through this to see what's happening. So this was our error on top. We're happy with that. But now we want to say process response data. So what am I doing over here? I'm saying message.countryCode. So here's a good example of how I'm adding a new property to the message object because it's available to me. And I'm saying message.countryCode is whatever the message payload sys country is, which is the response I got back from OpenWeatherMap. So I'm temporarily storing the country code because I need to use it when I call the country API. All right, so there we go. Our country code is stored. Then message.result.header. Now look there, message.result. I know, I can assume that message.result exists because when this flow starts, we used the change node to default it to an empty object. So I'm saying the header is whatever the name of the town is, the name of the search is, like London or Johannesburg. That will be the header for now. Then what I do over here is I go and grab their sunrise values, which is like a Unix timestamp. And their sunset is also a Unix timestamp. And all I do is I just use a little bit of logic over here to convert it into something more readable. But notice I'm using flow.get date params. There's some rules around this, how I want it to look. And instead of manually specifying it over here, I say, listen here, just go and reference it in my flow context because it can be used elsewhere. So let's go and do that quickly. And I will go up here and I will go and add set flow date params, and I've got it over here. It's JSON, and let me just show you what this looks like. You see, so it's just the parameters for that toLocal string, and I'm storing it in the flow context because it's much better practice. And coming back to the process result, we can now read the rest. So that takes care of our sunrise and sunset. And now look at this, message.result.current. So I'm creating a new object in message.result called current, which is our current forecast. And inside there, I've got description, the icon, you'll see that now, the temperature, and I'm just doing a little bit of rounding. Oh, and we need a temperature unit as well, sorry. Because if it's Fahrenheit, we use a certain a character. If we use metric, we use degrees Celsius. So instead of manually providing that all over, that can be something that is configurable via this over here. So I'm going to add a new one. There we go. And I'm just going to drag this up so that it sits with metric over there. Coming back over here. So that takes care of this temperature unit as well, which we use for the temperature and feels like. And then we've got humidity and then sunrise and sunset, which were defined over here. We return. In our JavaScript, in our function nodes, you always have to return the message object. You always have to return. It's just one of those things by default. We cannot remove this. It is not assumed. Always return the message object. Great, so there's our JavaScript logic, nothing hairy. We're just cleaning up the response data. And now that we know that this is what it looks like, we can now go and test this. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to remove this and I'm going to put this over here and let's deploy. And let's go and do a run search for London. Okay, so it's great that this still works. And now we can go here and expand the message object because I'm outputting the entire message object, and you can see there's result, there's the header London, brilliant. If we expand current, there we go, light rain, the icon, temperature, wonderful. We've got our information, we've got our data from the API. Now we can go and update the HTML content. So we're under current forecast. So here we've got broken clouds. I can now go and say, but that is not broken clouds anymore. That is result. Remember, we don't have to specify message. Result.current.description. And then icon. Look at this. So if we take a look at this dashboard, there's all these icons over here, but we need to dynamically determine the icon. And OpenWeatherMap tells us what the icon code is for the type of weather that's occurring. So instead of manually providing the icon, the rest of the URL is always the same. It's just the icon code that changes. So I can say over here, result, that was going to hurt me, result.current.icon. There we go. That takes care of that. And now we can just do the rest. And that should do the job. So let's click on done here. We've now modified a lot at the same time. But let's go and refresh this. So firstly, let's blank, that's fine. And I'm going to go and choose Johannesburg. Clear skies. All right. Let's try London. Light rain. Okay. All of this is working. Brilliant. So we haven't got our header. That's something that's not working right now. So if I just go back here and I see message.result.header, let's go back and see why this is not quickly working. We're doing payload.header. Okay, that's not going to work for us. So what we need to do here is we need to say message.result.header. And the prep error should be message.result.header here as well. We will test that shortly. So there we go, London, and if we say test, that still works. Okay, perfect. Everything is working as it should. We are now done with the current forecast. All we need to do, the worst is over. It's mostly copy and paste now. All we need to do is do the same for the 5-day forecast as well as for retrieving the country data. Right, welcome back everyone. So all I've done over here is I've copied and pasted these two for the 5-day forecast and the country info, which I will take you through shortly. And I just did a couple of updates here and there, in like updating the HTML content and adding one or two change flows. So if we just go for the 5-day forecast, you'll see that this once this continues for the current forecast, we'll just link it to go to the 5-day, and all we're doing over here is very similar to the current forecast. All we're doing is we're referencing the 5-day forecast. This I went and added into the change node as well, so that that URL is available. This was already there, and there's our search query. So nothing crazy over there, nothing happening over here. It's exactly the same as this. I just changed the label to say get 5-day, and over here is the result. This is exactly the same as the previous one. The only thing that changes here is the logic that I used. So you'll see over here message.result.5-day is now an array because we actually want, it's a table in that panel in the UI. And all I do here is I loop through the content and I go and format and return the data that I want to be using from the 5-day forecast, and I push that into the 5-day array. And all I do at the bottom is I only need 5 entries. I'm using the one that returns 16 days. So the moment I reach the 4th or the 5th entry inside the array, I break out of the loop and return message. So nothing crazy. From there, I go to fetch country info, which I do a prep as well. This is a lot easier because for the country info, I use the URL which I provided over here in the change rule, and I just reference message.countrycode, which I populated. I don't know if you remember, but I populated over here. So I go and store that. I use that for the country info over here, so that's fine. And you can see I copied and pasted because this is get 5-day. It should be say get country info, and it's not open weather map. Everything else is the same. It was just the label that changed. And now we process the result of this. Again, we have an error check to make sure that we can provide a descriptive error message. And all we do here is we, instead of the header just showing the town or city you searched, we include the country. So I get that from the country info. So I just added that over there. And all I'm doing is I'm grouping some currencies because there could be more than one. I'm grouping languages because there could be more than one. And message.result.country is equal to all this information. Everything I pretty much get from the API call. So if you felt like you were done in with me copying and pasting, you'll see that not much was missed. And all I did now was in the HTML content, I go and reference. So this was the current forecast. And yeah, on the 5-day weather forecast, you'll see I'm referencing the open weather map, and you can see I'm using Mustache to loop. So the same way we did a condition is the same way you can loop through arrays of JSON inside your JSON payload, and that allows us to dynamically create as many table row entries in our table based on the amount of entries that were inside the array. And if we get here to the country panel, you can see that I'm referencing just result.country, and there's all the details relative to it, and everything else has stayed the same. Nothing else has changed. So we're almost at the end, everyone. Okay, let's go and test this. Let's just move this up a little bit here for my OCD. Thank you. And let's go click on deploy, and now let's go and test our application. So if I refresh this, and I go and say, okay, fine, let's see if there's errors. There we go, managing errors properly. Let's click on Johannesburg, click on search, and there's our data. So current forecast, everything's working. And 5-day forecast, there we go. You see, the header is now the town or your search term as well as the country. And now we get information about the country, including the flag, the code, the capital, the population, and check how many languages we have in South Africa. Right, so we change this to London. London, everything changed. We've got a brilliant working weather dashboard. Now the final little Easter egg, just one more little thing that I'd like to show everyone before we call it a day, is what if you wanted this data as an API, as a JSON result, instead of it producing HTML? What if we said, let us go and say that if you don't provide the output, then we assume it's HTML. Otherwise, if it's JSON, then why don't we go and just change the rules to return the JSON content instead of returning the actual HTML? So let's quickly go. So over here, I'm going to add a switch, and all I'm going to do here is I'm going to say check output. And we're going to say message.request.query.output. If it's equal to JSON, then it will do one thing. Otherwise, we will just resort to HTML. We want HTML. It must happen on the otherwise, so we'll link that over there. What we need over here is we need a change node, and we want to set message.payload to message.current. All right, apologies everyone, I'm being silly over here. So I say that we must deliver the current and provide that to the payload, but obviously that's not the case. We need to provide the result. Message.result must be set, or message.payload must be set to message.result. A little bit of a brain fart on my side. It has been known to happen. All right, so if I do a search term here for London as an example, I get the dashboard, which is great, but if I just go and add and output is JSON, I will get the JSON instead of everything that was used for that web page. So that's great. Now it's just become an API that people can consume. And if you thought that the Easter eggs weren't done yet, what if I wanted this? I was working on my local development environment now. What if I wanted this on an online environment now that I'm happy with it and it's ready to go? How do I deploy this to another Node-RED instance that's actually available on the public cloud? Now, at Agility, we've got a lot of Node-RED instances everywhere. So I'm going to show you how you can take these flows and you can export and import them into another Node-RED environment, and watch how quickly you can immediately just use it. On the right hand, we've got our burger menu over here, and you see we have the option to say export. Now you've got a lot of options. You can either select nodes and only export a number of nodes, or one or many, or you can export everything within the flow tab, or you can export everything that has been created in this Node-RED instance. Now in our case, we just want the flow tab. So I click on current flow, and I can either download this as a JSON file, or I can copy this to clipboard, which is easy enough. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to our online testing environment. This is a Node-RED environment that is available on the Agility Cloud, and this is actually, it does a number of things, unit testing and all kinds of stuff. It's actually an online testing ecosystem that makes sure that our product Agility is working and everything happens as per it should. That's why you'll see a whole bunch of scheduled timers and all kinds of crazy things. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go and say I want to import this. I don't even have to create a new flow tab. I can just say I want to import. I can paste the content, or if you saved it to a JSON file, you can select the file and you can say import it into a new flow tab. I can click on import there, and you can see it got added as a new tab. There's our flows. I'm going to go ahead and do a full deploy, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this. So we know it's weather dashboard, but I'm going to take this URL over here, and very similar to our local, I'm going to paste this /API/weather/dashboard. If I search for Chicago, there's our dashboard working. We just deployed our Node-RED from our local to another environment, and that's how easy it is to work with Node-RED once you know what you're doing. So that concludes this live demonstration for today. It was a big one, but I'm sure that with everything that you've learned today, there is just so much that you can already go away and do in Node-RED. There's obviously so much more that I need to teach everyone, but this should give you a lot to go and already start working on Node-RED and building your flows and building your integrations. Thanks very much for watching.